Sap Alpha with enough juice to stun it.
Manual override track.
Done! No!
Images are so powerful.
Brain development is a crucial issue.
There is no substitute for face-to-face experience.
Talk to them instead of putting them in front of a TV.
Violent video games train children to be the perpetrators.
The food that the brain needs is experiences from the outside.
If we were going to interview someone to babysit our children and they were saying the things or doing the things that the television spits out, I don't think that we would agree to have them watch our kids.
And you didn't take it either, did you, Chucky? No, and I signed it.
Hello, I'm Mona Locke. I know that as a mother, raising children in today's media age is not always easy. When you have so many things to do in a day and so little time, we've all turned to television as a way to keep our children occupied so we can get things done. Screen technologies can also be great sources of education, but used too much in early childhood, they can have negative effects. Toddlers and preschoolers today spend an average of 4 hours every day passively watching television. By age 5, the average child in the United States has watched over 5,000 hours of television. If you add on the time children spend in front of videos, video games, and computers, this number grows closer to 6,000 hours or more by age 5. New research underscores the importance of children's early experiences to ensure proper brain growth. We now know that the environment children grow up in has a tremendous impact on their developing brains. Young brains are very impressionable. Like clay, growing brains are malleable and adapt to how they are molded. When the environment offers a broad range of sensory-rich activities, young children grow smarter, more creative, and more socially and emotionally capable.
That little doll that you guys were holding.
In a world of screens, parents are challenged to find the right activities. Tom and Ann Snyder work hard to make sure their 3-year-old daughter balances television time with playtime, but they encounter stresses along the way.
One of the difficulties we have with Illy trying to protect her from the scary scenes is even with Disney movies or Sesame Street movies, sometimes they can be scary.
We don't have a lot of control over what's showing when we travel or when we go to a friend's house, for instance. There was another incident we were in a friend's house and the TV was showing Lethal Weapon 4. All of a sudden, we heard Illy screaming and crying and say, "I don't want to watch that, I don't want to watch that." And that was during a scene that a lot of people got killed. And I had to explain to Illy that things on TV are often not true, and they are mostly pretense, and it's, I have to calm her down.
Marti Varela is a working parent who also experiences television as an additional source of stress in her busy life. As a mother of 4-year-old twins and a precocious 2-year-old, Marti bears most of the parenting responsibility since her husband is a flight attendant and often away from home. Marti finds that using TV to keep the children occupied often complicates her life instead of making it easier.
We would come in and I would be in the kitchen and they'd be in their room watching TV, and I would finish cooking dinner and come out and they'd eat as fast as they could, or sometimes in between eating they'd go and look at the television and come back, and it was weird. I mean, I could see this. I'm not an idiot. I mean, and because of my need to have them distracted, to have them out of my hair, as it were, I was letting this happen. I appreciate the stress that's on parents, to do so many things at one time that they feel the need to use this instrument as a babysitter.
How can parents raise children optimally in a world saturated by screen entertainment? In this video, we'll hear what experts say about how too much TV and video can hurt children's development, and how inappropriate content, particularly media violence, can harm children as well. We'll also give you simple, practical activities that you can use in your family, which will make a big difference in your child's life. Television, video, and computers can be used to enhance children's growth rather than hinder it. Parents can make a tremendous difference throughout the early years. Using screen technologies in the best interests of our children means knowing how their brains work. The human brain begins growing soon after conception and continues to grow fast and furiously for 9 months. At the height of activity, from about the 5th through the 7th month, the embryo's brain is generating brain cells at the rate of 250,000 a minute, or 15 million cells every hour. A newborn's brain has over 100 billion brain cells. These brain cells, also called neurons, are just waiting to connect. Learning cannot take place without these connections called synapses. Synapses will only connect with the proper stimuli in the child's environment. When a baby starts life with lots of love and care from a nurturing adult, his or her brain begins on the right track. Human touch and love are needed stimuli. The young brain will not grow as well without them. In addition to lots of interaction with loving adults, babies need lots of interaction with the world around them. Can too much television be considered a deprived environment for young children? Many experts think so. Dr. Donald Schifrin, an active member of the American Academy of Pediatrics, is very concerned about youngsters growing up saturated by visual media.
Television is most obviously the #1 leisure activity of most children from age 2 on up. The statistics are that most youngsters, young and old, watch TV anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a day, that they will watch TV in their lifetime up and through high school, probably more than they will attend class. The only other activity they do even close to as much as they watch television is sleep. And so what we see is that television has an inordinate influence on youngsters. And what they watch and how they watch it and how much they watch is extremely important, both in developmental terms and also in future interactional terms, in terms of communication and social and behavioral interaction with their peers. Their brains are basically engaged in a very passive exercise. These youngsters are not going about the usual business of childhood, which is play. When youngsters play, they involve all of their systems, gross motor systems, fine motor systems, integrative cognitive systems. They have to learn the intellectual exercise of how to operate a toy, how to make the toy move, how to have the toy avoid obstacles, how to place the toy in certain positions. So everything is involved, spatial relations, working with and sharing the toy, becoming interactional on the playground. All of these things are important. When we watch television, the only thing we need to do is be focused on the television, not on ourselves, not on our skills, and not on anyone else around us. When youngsters play independently, and they process things that they're doing independently, and they produce some self-calming skills. For instance, if things aren't going well and the blocks are falling down, they have to say to themselves, now, what is the best way for me to balance these blocks? So again, the independence of having to discuss mentally and internally how things are going, to work through those obstacles, to learn and relearn a skill does not happen when we watch television. Skill building does not happen when we're sitting in front of a passive screen. What we show youngsters, what they see, what they hear, what they feel in those first 3 years is tremendously important to them. Starting at the age of 4 to 5, these youngsters enter a tremendous skill building process. Infancy is building trust and, shall we say, preliminary skills. When we get to school, we now have an opportunity to show those skills off and build on them and really become skill building in terms of learning to read, learning to write, learning to think, learning to create physical skills such as ballet, gymnastics, baseball, basketball, etc. So youngsters have a tremendous opportunity at the age of 5 to begin to focus their efforts on building certain skills in life, shall we say, enhancing areas. Those skills will not be accomplished if their basic tenet is to say, I'm going to spend 4 or 5 hours of my day going ahead and sitting passively and letting things sweep over me. I'm not going to have a chance to build those skills because, frankly, I'm involved elsewhere. My brain is involved elsewhere in a visual way. certainly we see that lack of television in youngsters that are really using a lot of television will produce depression and sadness and anger and anxiety and frustration. So if we say a constant diet of this is like a constant diet of anything else, withdrawal can produce significant symptoms. So we can expect, and what we tell parents in the office is that if your youngster is watching 5 hours of television a day and you want to go back to an hour and a half, you're going to have some sort of taper process instead of just cutting the youngster off, because that's going to be a tremendous amount of withdrawal the youngster is going to go through.
Busy parents today find that from time to time, TV can be an easy babysitter. We all use it occasionally to get work done or just to know that our child is quiet and safe while we're getting dinner on the table. A little of this type of TV viewing is okay. It's the day in, day out habit of watching 2 or 3 hours every day that can be harmful. Dr. Moses-Aaron specializes in children's development. As director of a therapeutic center for children who have experienced trauma, she understands the developmental needs in early childhood.
When we allow a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old to watch TV as much as 2 hours a day, I think we're doing a really intense disservice to the child's early development. Brain development is a crucial issue, and the constant stimulation does not help the brain to develop in the slow, methodical way it needs to develop. TV is too much change continually in front of the child's eyes. Young children need a long time to develop the focus into something. It may take as much as 15-20 minutes for the typical child to begin to develop a theme, a play activity for themselves. TV never allows that to happen. It's constant changing of stimuli, and I feel that this really deprives the child of a fundamental skill that they need to develop at very young ages. Another concern I have about TV is it's way too much action and a lot of violence most of the time, but I'm more concerned about the intensity of the action and the constant changing of the scenes with so much action. The young brain can't tolerate that much overstimulation. They need the slowness of being exposed to something, kind of absorbing it and developing their own sort of speed into it. If you watch young children sometimes, they'll walk at something, they'll kind of sit there as if they've spaced out at it, but actually they're focusing. They're trying to figure out what they're seeing. TV never allows that to happen because of the constant change that we see. There's plenty of evidence to show that it deprives the brain of the normal way it needs to grow or the typical way it needs to grow.
Early childhood educators are also very concerned that children are not playing enough, not getting enough sensory experiences for proper brain growth. Juanita Ramsey-Jevne encourages parents to let children get messy.
We can see that children need to have their hands in the gooey stuff. There's been a lot of studies done that show that if children don't use their brain, they lose those cells. Watching kind of puts a child to sleep in a lot of ways. It just slows them right down, and it doesn't require active thinking on their part, and doing it is a whole different level of brain activity. As research has shown, it works on the higher thinking skills, and it just develops a whole different part of the brain, which is necessary for a child in order to be able to think and problem solve and do all the things we want them to be able to do.
I think growing brains also need bodies, they need movement in their life. So many children are sitting still for too many hours a day. A well-developed motor system is so critical to learning in school. The other thing is they need to develop a sense of concentration and attention span. And I'll be the first to say that they cannot get that from sitting and watching visual images that change constantly and are very distracting and actually jerk children's attention around.
As children become involved in activities requiring their time, attention, and mental concentration, they're actually growing important brain structures. Scientific research shows that when the brain works at solving puzzles or learning a new skill, actual structures in the brain will grow. These structures, called dendrites, enable the brain to make important connections. Without them, the brain just can't think very well. If children develop sparse dendrites, like the brain cell shown, they are much more likely to be at risk for learning problems at school. Rich dendritic brain structures are absolutely necessary for a child to be able to solve problems, think abstractly, and develop a creative imagination.
I heard the baby's wail and leaped to his feet. There was a sharp rap at the chamber door.
A great way to grow dendrites is to read aloud to children. Reading to children usually involves physical contact and positive interaction, so it also helps develop children's emotional health as well as their cognitive abilities. My daughter Emily loves it when I read to her. She soaks up the stories like a sponge, and she loves a wide variety of books, and it seems the more I read to her, the more curious she becomes and more excited about learning. Evidence over the last 30 years continually shows that the most important thing parents can do to ensure children's success in school is to read to them 20 minutes every day. It's such a simple thing, yet it has such profound effects.
Well, they're thinking about it, aren't they?
As Juanita reads, the children have to follow along, constantly thinking about what may happen next. They have to pay close attention. Unlike television, listening to a story requires children to use their imaginations. TV gives children every single image of the storyline. They don't have to make up the pictures in their own heads, but they do when we read to them. Their brains are very busy. In fact, all types of language experiences provide essential stimuli for growing young brains starting very early. When babies, toddlers, and preschoolers live in an environment rich with many language opportunities, they learn early on that reading is fun. They develop a self-concept as a reader. They know they can read. Continual exposure to print during the early years makes learning to read so much easier and so much more enjoyable. Language development and thinking are interrelated within the brain. The cerebral cortex develops higher-level thinking skills in direct proportion to language abilities. As children acquire more and more words as part of their vocabulary, they also acquire the ability to express abstract concepts. The more words they know, the more their thinking abilities can grow, so the more exposure to reading, family conversation, and other language experiences, the more likely children will be smart and successful in school.
As a teacher, I know that today most of our teaching is still done by someone talking, and the children needing to be able to listen carefully and to pull out the valuable information that they need. And so for me, a child that can listen to the little bird go hop, hop, hop and hear when the hops come and respond at that point, they're developing such skills that will help them so much in life.
Going to the window to say how do you do when he shook his little tail and away he flew. Please come back!
Let's summarize what we know about young brains to this point. Sensory play experiences every day are essential for optimal brain growth. At the same time, it's important to reduce time in front of a screen and increase children's time in self-directed play. Secondly, it's important to provide a home environment which encourages children to think. Just as the heart knows its job is to beat and the lungs know how to breathe, the brain knows how to think. It wants to think. Encouraging the joy and excitement of learning in early childhood paves the way for lifelong learning. The third important ingredient is language. Reading aloud, talking with children often, and providing lots of opportunities for children to express themselves are keys to opening the brain's potential. With plenty of play, thinking, and language opportunities every day, young brains receive the necessary foundation for all future learning. There is another problem in a media age, however, that puts young children at risk, and that problem is media violence. From early on, our children are saturated with violent imagery. By age 12, the average American child will have witnessed at least 20,000 murders and 80,000 assaults on television. Many programs popular with preschoolers average 26 to 200 acts of violence every hour. How does all this violent imagery affect young children? Dr. Brandon Centerwall, a professor of epidemiology at the University of Washington, has conducted studies on media violence and understands its effects.
In order to understand the impact of media violence, violence on television, on young children, one has to first understand normal child development. What has been found by research conducted at the University of Washington by Andrew Meltzoff is that children are born with a capacity to imitate adult behavior. So that, in fact, from as early as just a few hours after birth, a child is already imitating adult facial expressions. As early as a year old, 14 months old, children can be demonstrated to be imitating behavior that they see on television. Although children are born with an instinct to imitate adult behavior, they are not born with any instinct at all which tells them whether or not a particular behavior ought to be imitated. They will imitate anything. They will imitate behaviors which are nonsense, and they will imitate behaviors which are destructive, violent, and antisocial. If people are, chasing each other with guns and shooting at each other, that's just the way the world worked. So it's been demonstrated that up through about age 5, children really can't distinguish between what is true on television, in the sense of, say, a news story, and what is fiction. Television has enormous amounts of violence. It is admittedly inside a box, but nevertheless the child will dream about it, the child will have nightmares about it. Nightmares in response to television are frequent. And even if only 1% of children who are watching all this become traumatized to that level of developing real brain chemistry changes, you're still talking about hundreds of thousands or even millions of children in the United States who are being shaped into being permanently traumatized and therefore more likely to respond inappropriately in difficult situations, more likely to become violent in response to social circumstances.
Well, our teachers as well as our parents are concerned about the level of violence the kids are going into. The Power Rangers and all of, and back a while it was the Ninja Turtles and doing all the judo chops and clubbing their friends and that kind of thing. Teachers are trying to talk to parents about the effect of those types of shows and how the kids are bringing that right into the classroom and how it really does indeed have a startling effect on the whole atmosphere of the classroom. And what really concerns me is because these kids think this is such a popular character, they're doing it and kids are scared of them because they're hitting them, they're clubbing them, they're judo chopping them, they're karateing them or whatever. And other kids are going, he hurt me, I'm not going by him anymore. And next thing you know, you got a kid with no friends.
Media violence is one of the nation's biggest problem with children today and learning in school. We're seeing a huge increase of aggressive behavior on the playground and much more imitative play. And I think that for too many young children, they're very aware of themselves as destroyers and not very aware of their creative side. And as a kindergarten teacher, I see very often that imitative play where they're a superhero and they bring that into the classroom, and there is really no place for that in a classroom. And that media violence is so pervasive in our society now that I think it's a real tragedy.
How can they teach a little child 4 years old or 5 years old, people shooting people, in cartoons or fighting, doing all these things? What's the message they're sending? It is really sad. And I can see that, like, for example, the other day I was at my daughter's school and one of the children over there was fighting and being so aggressive. And when I went to stop him and I said, why are you doing this? And he said something like, oh, I was watching this program last night, this TV cartoon things, and I saw that and I just wanted to practice. I come from this country where I saw so many things. You know, I went to a civil war and everything. I saw the real violence, and it is not fun when you see the real thing. How can that be a funny thing to watch? That somebody's dying, or that somebody's shooting another person, or somebody's fighting. What's the message?
We've heard about the problems of overuse of TV and the problems of media violence and how these can really impact children, especially at a young age. Now, let's talk about what we can do to make a change. The problems are real, but so are the solutions. There are lots of simple things that parents can do throughout a busy day that can really make a difference.
I had a television in my children's room at home, and I had done it probably out of convenience because it was easy to keep the kids distracted in their room away from where I was, you know, needing to be in the kitchen or in the living room cleaning or whatever. I felt so convinced that this was not a good thing that I came home and I removed the TV and I took it out that night. And there was much haranguing about, you know, that being a bad thing, or why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to us? And I started to notice as a week went by, that at night when I told them to go to bed, they went into the room and they went to bed. And prior to this point in time, they would go into the room and we would sing and we would read and say our prayers, and they'd go to bed, and I'd put the TV on for half an hour and set the timer, and then when the timer went off, they would put it back on. And I would go in and I would turn it off and they'd put it back on, and this would go on for between 45 minutes and an hour, and they wouldn't get to bed until 9:15 at night sometimes because of that back and forth effort. And now they were associating their bedroom with play that didn't involve the television. It was a lot easier than I expected it to be. The repercussions that I expected to have, you know, the constant nagging to watch TV or the ability to have the TV back in their room, didn't happen. If I were going to talk to another parent, you know, I want them to know that, oh, I feel their pain. I know where they're coming from. I know how hard it is to come in after a long day's work and to really engage with your child and put out the extra energy that's required to be at their level of involvement. And I think that the reward of doing that is really obvious. If we were going to interview someone to babysit our children and they were saying the things or doing the things that the television spits out, I don't think that we would agree to have them watch our kids. And I feel because of that, I need to be more conscious about that time. And I'm not saying that I won't have relapses. I'm sure that there will be times when I'll say, please just watch TV so I can get X, Y, or Z done, but it will not be on a daily basis.
The American Academy of Pediatrics is very strong in their ability to say to parents, you need to be aware and to pick and to role model well. However, we also say that probably about 1 to 2 hours of television per day is about as much as youngsters should have. Now, that's recently been amended to say 1 to 2 hours of screen time per day. Now, screen time now means something different than television. Screen time means handheld computer games. Screen time means screen computer games. And screen time means also computerized computer games.
What makes the most sense for a young child is limiting their television time to 7 to 10 hours a week. Thinking in weekly terms gives busy parents more flexibility. That way, if a child watches more than an hour or two on any given day, the next day the parents can reduce TV time or perhaps not turn on the television at all that day.
We also try to arrange playmates as frequently as we could, because when she has somebody to play with, TV is not important. And I also have a lot of books around the house for her. In her room, it's basically, there are all books in her room. So she also learned to read a lot, and she pretends she can read. So she reads a book just from the memory she has from us reading to her.
Yeah, I found that keeping a balance of her activities when she was younger has very much benefited us when she's older, because when she's 1.5, 2.5, to do puzzles or art or reading, of course, just about everything you do with her, you have to spend a lot of time with her and help her and teach her. But now that she's just a little bit older, another year older, we find that she does puzzles on her own and does a lot of art on her own and looking through books on her own. So just by investing that time when she was very young, and exposing her to a lot of activities, and by example, getting her involved and interested in a lot of different activities besides TV, we find that as she's grown older, she continues with those interests.
It's not easy because, you know, I'm a single mom. I'm the one who takes responsibility for my whole house. And as a single parent, you have no time for yourself sometimes. And you dedicate your time to your children. So it's very important to me that in that time we do things together as a family. Either we cook or we play a game, we read books, we learn this and learn that. I know that some of the parents said, I'm tired, I want to do this, I want to do that. I have to put my kids, you know, in a living room and so they can watch a TV or video, whatever, in order for me to do things. But the thing is that, let's say they're cooking something. They can take the kids to the kitchen and say, can we all do this? Can somebody help with this? Can somebody help with that? And there's a lot of ways the whole family can participate.
Take activities that cost no money. Like for instance, you know, there's different things that you could do. You could walk to the library with your child. You could talk about things on the way to that library. You could get to the library, you can get the books, you could read through those things. You could think back to days when you were a child. And what kinds of things did you do? Your family activities, what were those fun things? I mean, you could have kids writing on junk mail. That can take the place of a cartoon. They can have their own color center. I mean, there's so many kinds of things that are available just in our everyday. You can have kids help prepare meals, set the table. Those seem like they're simple things, and sometimes you think, well, you know, those are busy things too. But they're therapeutic in the sense that, one, it brings the family together. It's helped kids with their positive self-esteem, feeling good and capable. And it also gives them a chance to do math, if you will, one-on-one, eye-hand coordination that can take the place of a video game.
When I talk to parents in the office as a pediatrician and they inquire, and I inquire, do you have a video game system at home such as Sega, Sony, Nintendo? If they don't, I positively make the statement that it is not important to have a system that plays video games in your home. If you look at the way youngsters play these video games and you watch their faces, you see a definite drug response. And that's why I say to parents, don't have this in your house, period. End of story. There is no middle ground for me. I am definitely encouraging them to get a computer, because much as we don't want to consider it, the future for youngsters in terms of learning and, shall we say, academics is in that box. The computer is a tremendously valuable tool for youngsters to learn how to use it in the right way, because they can process information, they can create things, they can get feedback from the computer, because the computer has infinite patience when it comes to teaching. It never gets frustrated with a youngster giving a wrong answer. It will say, let's try again. You're doing a good job. Wow.
As far as computer games, there's so many wonderful computer software programs out right now. Programs that really focus on helping the child create. There's so many wonderful opportunities for children to create and use their own thinking and their own imagination. And slow-paced, again, look for slow-paced games, and making sure that a child has a chance to think and to organize information and use their own imaginations when they use computer games.
Many parents find immediate results by establishing a few simple rules and striving for consistency.
We have a rule in my house that my two kids, they follow that rule. It's that for 30 minutes, they can watch TV. And it has to be things that is not violent things or things that are sending a wrong message to our children. because I'm against that.
Sometimes the family TV becomes a source of stress when husband and wife don't see eye to eye. Becky and Pierre Morad had differing opinions about what's best for their 14-month-old son, Derek.
I'm the one that brought TV into our marriage. I like to watch a few things. My husband doesn't like to watch TV at all because he finds it to be a very addictive drug for himself, and his way of managing it is to totally eliminate it from his life.
Becky and I, frankly, I don't think we disagree horribly about the role of TV and the media in our lives, but I think we differ in degree.
I don't plan to encourage Derek to watch a lot of TV, but I do think that it's unavoidable in our culture, and I'd like him to learn how to be able to manage it for himself by showing him how we manage it.
I agree with Becky that that you can't avoid the media, and you can't avoid the TV.
I think there are some really nice family moments you can have with watching TV shows and having that in common with other people, and I'm not totally opposed to TV being a small part of our family life. And I want Derek to learn how to think about what he's seeing, especially the commercials, and think about the images and what they're trying to get him to think.
So it might come down to I'll be comfortable on a given night with half an hour, and she'll be comfortable with an hour and a half. But other than that, frankly, I think we're in agreement.
Communication is the key. Talk with your spouse about your reasons for limiting TV time. Explain what young brains need to develop well, and compromise.
I think for me, it is really being more cognizant of what the TV does for brain development in young people. It behooves us really to check out what it is that they're watching and what kind of impact it has. A lot of times parents think if they have to turn the TV off, what will we do in its place? Or, I'm kind of worried about what I'm going to do if I do that, or I don't know if I could be successful because this is something we've always done. And I think changes are always difficult at the beginning, but we take one step at a time. And I would not definitely be suggesting any change that happens right now. You turn off that TV and you never look at it again in your life, But to be able to just take even a half-hour increment a day and take that out and do something different with that half hour. I think that if people could just do that, they could see the changes within a week. So truly, the parent is the primary educator. We at Head Start always believe that. And once the parent understands the significance of the healthy brain development and how pulling back from that TV will give children an opportunity to grow in a more healthy way, I think parents want that.
Did you know that research has shown that the TV and video habits youngsters have as toddlers and preschoolers are the TV and video habits that they'll have for the rest of their lives? The daily choices we make can help our youngsters establish healthy media habits. Here are 5 ways you can get started. Limit the total time of TV, video, and computer time to 1 hour a day or less most days. This gives time for children to do other activities essential to brain growth. Talk and ask questions before or during or after watching a television program. This gives children the opportunity to think and question what they see. Turn off the TV when no one is watching it. This gives children time to play without distractions. It helps to develop their attention spans and their creativity too. Keep the child's bedroom TV free. Invest in an aquarium, a musical instrument in lessons, or outside play equipment instead. And when your child does spend time in front of a screen, tune in to educational programs. There are many television shows, videos, and computer games on the market today that will provide hours of fun learning for your child. Our children will be adults in a complex technological world. We can only imagine how advanced and sophisticated video and computers will become in the next 20 years. The best preparation we can give children today is to make sure their brains develop appropriately. Then they will be equipped with the thinking abilities, the creativity, and the vision to succeed and thrive in the future. Thanks for caring enough about early learning to make a difference.